Talks, the podcast about instructional design made by instructional designers here at McLennan Community College. I'm here today with Paulina Sidwell. Paulina.
Hi, everyone.
She is a professor of engineering, and she does teach some math classes.
That's right.
Okay, and we'll talk about that just a minute. But Paulina, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you find yourself at MCC?
Sure. So I am born and raised in Monterrey, Mexico, and came here to the United States on a tennis scholarship to play for New Mexico State University. Mm-hmm. And I majored in industrial engineering, and I also got my master's there, kind of back to back. And I found myself, I got married, and my husband found a job in the Waco area. I didn't know anyone in Waco. I didn't really know much about Waco. I just moved here, and shortly thereafter met April Andries, who is one of the other engineering instructors here at MCC. Mm-hmm. And at the time, she had kind of started the engineering program a few years before. It was growing quickly, and she was looking for an adjunct to supplement as she needed, she had too many courses and not enough people to teach them. And to be honest, I did not plan to become a professor when I started my industrial engineering career, mm-hmm. but I figured it was worth the shot. I was looking for a job. I taught a couple classes, and I quickly realized that I really, really loved it. And, after a year adjuncting, then the program kept growing, and I was asked to stay on as full-time.
Well, I'm glad that you came all that through that journey to be here with us, because I hear great things. That's why you're on the podcast. Great things about
Thank
you.
you.
So. All right, so before we get in depth into our content, we're going to talk a little bit. We do a little icebreaker, of course,
sure.
to get you a little warmed up for talking. And so one thing, I like to ask people is where they like to eat in Waco, because, of course, I like to eat. I think everybody likes to eat. So and there's always a hidden gem. Someone comes up with a hidden gem somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. So, Paulina, what is your hidden Waco gem that you...
Okay, so my hidden Waco gem is a place called Sugar Spice in Hewitt.
Sugar Spice,
mm-hmm.
Okay.
It is small. It is a place with, they do boba-style drinks and Vietnamese pho. Okay. And the menu is very small, but delicious. I just think they kind of knock it out of the park. And comes to show you don't need a menu with 47 things to be a great place. Uh-huh. I'm always finding an excuse to go there, and on a cold day, there's nothing that makes me happier than getting some warm pho from Sugar Spice. I love Asian food of all kinds of varieties, and Waco has had the misfortune of having great places closed down, like Mama Fu's.
Yeah.
But every time a new one shows up, I have to try it. And this one, I was not expecting it because it's so small and kind of hidden away in a place where you wouldn't expect that kind of food. Yeah. And wow, it just completely surprised me, and I love it.
That sounds good. I'm going to have to try it. Now, the sugar and spice, do they have is that for the boba?
Yes,
the
I'm guessing. Yes.
And I like sugar.
Yes, they do have very sugary, delicious drinks, which are the great complement for a hot summer day. I don't know, everything that they make is just very, very good.
Okay. Well, but boba is boba, I guess. Boba?
I don't know.
It's an acquired thing. I don't know. So we went to a place not too long ago, and I think it was kind of like we had mixed reactions on the.
Sure.
So do you like the boba?
I do. But I feel they have different flavors, and I find that it's more about finding the right flavor combination for you, because some are very milky, some are very sweet, some are more like watery or more like iced teas. Mm-hmm. And there's even different kinds of, I don't know what to call them, boba, different toppings they call them.
Yeah.
And some are, it's weird to explain it this way, but some are squishier and some are softer and some are harder. And with the people I've gone, everybody kind of, after experimenting a little bit, figures out what works the best for them.
Okay.
So, for instance, my husband and I go there all the time, and we order completely different types of drinks, but we both love our one drink that we always go to now.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely going to have to go. We're going to have to try that out. I wish... We're talking a little bit about your background. You came to MCC. You moved from Monterrey, Mexico. How was that? Do you miss anything from there? Or do you remember? Do you?
Oh, sure. I moved. I mean, I was 18, 19 when I moved. So, and I still go fairly often. My family's still all there. So I probably go once or twice a year. I do miss my family, obviously, and my friends there. I still stay in touch with a lot of people. And definitely the food.
Yeah.
There's something about food from home that just, no matter where or no matter how good the food is elsewhere, it's just not the same.
Yeah, sure.
And it's a big city, so surprisingly, Monterrey has 5 million people, and sometimes Waco's a little more slower pace, which is great for, my family. It's a great fit for us. I'm very happy here, but sometimes I do miss the faster pace of the big city.
Yeah.
Like where I grew up.
Yeah.
Having more options of things to do over the weekends or places to eat or whatnot. But
does your family know? Are they like? Do they know what you do? Like they're like understand that like your day to day, or are they just like, oh, she's just a teacher? Or...
No, that's a good question. Funnily enough, my father is an industrial engineer and my mother is a college professor.
Oh, awesome!
So I'm a college professor who majored in industrial engineering. So I kind of. That was not the plan. It kind of worked out that way. But my mother is a college professor for a very prestigious college in Monterrey called Monterrey Tech.
Awesome.
She's actually now the department head for her, but she teaches accounting. But I had a pretty good idea of what a college professor does.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time. We actually discuss strategies that work in the classroom. She's a great resource for me.
Yeah.
She has a lot of experience. And, of course, the colleges are very different. And cater to different populations, but we still have a lot to discuss and a lot of things that work for everyone. So it's been interesting. And I think I've been more on the forefront of this big change to online. So when COVID happened, I was very ready to help her navigate that because she's been a face-to-face only professor her whole life. And I've been doing a little bit of hybrid or a blended or online and face-to-face, and I had a lot more experience with technology in general. But
one thing I really wanted to talk to you about, because we have a new kind of new style of teaching our online classes, which I guess it's face-to-face online or Zoom. It's called HiFlex.
That's right.
And you've been doing it for how long now?
I think this is our second year only of doing it officially.
Second year officially. Okay, so tell me about your experience with HiFlex. Would you recommend it? What are your students saying? So give us a little bit of feedback.
So HiFlex, as you mentioned, it's defined by the fact that students can pick their own modality every day. So the class is taught simultaneously online, face to face, and through Zoom. And you'll have students that one day come to class face-to-face, and for the next class, they don't come at all, and they watch videos at home. And the next class, they can't come, but they want to connect, and they'll connect through Zoom. So what this allows is for a lot of flexibility for our students. It allows for a lot of not only flexibility, but opportunities to present the material in more than one way. There's students who engage in two modalities because they come to class and then they'll rewatch the videos at home later on, or vice versa. They'll watch the videos and then come to class already prepared.
Yeah.
For engineering, when this came up, we were so excited because we have a very, I'm not going to say unique to engineering only problem, but it is not a problem everybody has. And that is that we have a lot of specialized classes that are only offered once a year at this one particular time, and they're needed for graduation. And we can't afford to teach them, but we can't justify teaching them several times or several sections because our student body's small. Yeah. So we only really need, there's these 6 students that are electrical engineers, and they need this one class, and it's only, because there's only 6 or 8 of them, we can only offer it in the spring. And it's offered for, schedule. Our schedule in engineering is very complicated because we have 3 faculty. We teach 10 different courses. And we have to make sure we're not conflicting with like the math that they need to take, the physics, the chemistry, some of the other core classes in their engineering program. So after all is said and done and we figure out classrooms, there's only this one time that something can be offered. And we were running into students saying, I need this class to graduate, but it either A, conflicts with another class, or B, I work and, they're working with me, but I can't totally just, this is at 11, you're killing me, right? I can't take off in the middle of the day or something along those lines. And we always felt very, our hands were tied about what we could do about that. So when this came up, we thought this is going to be perfect for those specific classes that are only offered once a year, so that any student that needs it can take it and they can engage with the class in whatever way is most convenient to them.
Yeah.
And which can change because some people have work schedules that change, or some of them say, I'm going to come, and halfway through the semester they get a job or things like that. Now, it's challenging because you're basically having to prep your class 3 different ways.
Sure.
And having to keep up with multiple things at the same time. So in terms of, as faculty, I'm enjoying it, but I'm also in a position where I had already taught the classes that I'm teaching HiFlex in different ways. So I kind of had the different experiences already to pull from. I already had all these pre-recorded videos. I also had already taught it face-to-face. I have a lot of experience, as we all do now, with Zoom. And I thought, I can do this. I think I have what it takes, and I think I have all the materials. But you need to think a lot of things through. So on the pros, you're giving students a lot of flexibility. But on the cons, from the professor side, it's a lot of prep, and it's a lot of upkeep. It's a lot of keeping track of things, of who came, who, when, and why, and how do you do attendance when people don't necessarily always physically come to class, or what if they're on Zoom, or, even how do you do things like tests? Because what if there's a student who works at that time and can't come in for tests? Are the tests going to be asynchronous? If yes, then how do you do that in a way that makes sense for everyone? So on and so forth. Another one of the challenges that I've experienced is that students, I think ultimately you really need to prepare your students for the experience itself. And I have found that it's probably our experienced students who are who are better suited for a HiFlex class. I'm not saying you couldn't teach this at the freshman level, but I think if it's your first time in college taking a college class, you don't necessarily know what is going to be the best way for you to learn. You're still learning how you learn. And it might be tempting to say, well, I'm just not going to come to class and take it all online, and maybe that wasn't the best for you. Or maybe you might be, I have to go face-to-face all the time and not giving yourself any flexibility. So all of the classes that we teach through HiFlex, which I think we do in the engineering program, maybe 4 or 5 of them, I can't remember, are sophomore level classes, where we know our students have already had our own classes, other engineering classes before, and know what it's like to, how difficult the classes are, how much work it takes. And you need to remind students that just because you didn't come to class doesn't mean none of the modalities should be any different result-wise. None of them are easier or harder. None of them are less work. It's more about, again, convenience, flexibility, and preference. But they don't know that unless they have had prior experiences. And instilling that, it's giving students that much, that much power over their learning can be very empowering for them. But at the same time, it can be very tempting to also be like, well, I'll just not go to class today, and I'll just, so you also have to keep up with students like, hey, you haven't been coming and you didn't turn your last assignment in, so what's going on? Is there something we need to discuss? Or, hey, maybe you should start coming to class again, or, hey, maybe if you can't come, you should check out Zoom. Zoom can be challenging while you're in live class because you have to be both kind of taking questions from both Zoom and your classroom, the people that are there face to face, and you have to be also asking Zoom for feedback, and are you hearing me, or do you have any questions? And remembering that they're even there when they're quiet and muted most of the times can be challenging. But I have found, and again, because we've taught it to small classes and I haven't taught it that many times, I don't have very solid data about the results, but overall, for what I gather from the students is that they're grateful that this is an option, that some of them would not have been able to take the class otherwise, or that some of them were able to do other things that they needed to do because they are able to have that choice. So, but it's been great. It's been great, but it's been a challenge, but a challenge that I've felt very excited about because I see the positive impact it's having on our students.
That's
in our program overall.
Yeah. Do you find that students actually, do they lean towards a modality, or do they just do you find they use that HyFlex, I'm going to come in one day and then online one day? Or
there's a good mix. There's students that from the get-go are I'm going to be 100% online because I actually work. And I'm never going to be able to make it. And I'm okay, cool. Just keep up with the notes and with the activities and the calendar and all that stuff. But I will say right now, my class is fairly small. I think I have about 15 students this time around. But I think I have a good mix. I have let's say 5 students that are online only. They work or they have other commitments.
Sure.
5 students that are religiously there every class. They never miss unless they're sick or otherwise something happened. And I have about 5 that will mix and match. Depending if they're having a busy week, they have another test to study for, they have a project that they're working on, they'll do the online lectures instead of coming to class, or maybe they're tired and they'll sleep in sometimes, and then they'll show up for the next class, and then the next class will be on Zoom, and then the following one they're there face to face. So they always keep me guessing. I never know if I'm going to be lecturing in front of 3 or 4 students or in front of 10. But I don't mind, and I think it's been interesting.
Interesting. Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad that you are taking it from the approach of, hey, this is going to benefit our students. It's work, it's hard, but you're seeing the benefits there. So,
sure.
Student first approach.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to approach. Yes, we're definitely not doing this because it's there. And that's one advice I would give is if you're considering HyFlex, doing HyFlex just because is not, it's too much work to just do it for the fun of it. And I may be wrong, and somebody might see a benefit that's so clearly there. But for me, the benefit started from the point of view of there was a need. And the need was for schedule flexibility for these students, particularly for classes that weren't offered but once a year or at this one time. And from there, we found a solution rather than the other way around of finding, oh, this is cool, and let's see what this does. That being said, I think we all learned, I hope, at least I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but I can speak for myself and some of my colleagues, that we learned a lot about what makes online education effective and not effective through COVID. What works, what doesn't work. So now that we are, post-COVID or whatever we want to call it, we could, and there's a lot of people that are going straight back to, face-to-face, how things were before, and that's fine. But I'm glad that this came up at this time where we still were fresh on those experiences and we're able to take that we learned and keep the good and without the bad. Well, not without the bad, but having learned from the bad. And now we I don't think I would have been brave enough to embrace HyFlex had it not been through the experience of the 2 years of basically all online that COVID put us in the position to have to do. And having done it and having come up with all of these solutions because you'll run into a lot of interesting challenges about how do you do group projects, how do you do tests, how do you do pop quizzes, how do you do, which I had to scrap, for instance. I can't do pop quizzes anymore, but I found alternative use for those materials. How do you do collaboration, how do you do questions, how do you do notes, how do you do all of these things you have to think through. And I hadn't thought about everything, but I already had maybe 80% of it put together by the time I started thinking about teaching this HyFlex. But that came as a result of those years teaching online from LA and teaching through the COVID times. And now I'm hopefully using best practices from all 3 modalities.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a newer that it's almost like the AI stuff. It's like we're living through, we're learning as we're doing, right? So that's interesting. And you probably say that it's easier to do transition from an online class if you've taught online,
absolutely,
to HyFlex than rather go face to face to HyFlex.
Yes, and if you think about my Brightspace shell or a Brightspace shell, it's easier to start from a shell that was already designed to work online to have like basically this online shell, and also happen to have students that show up for class, because there will be students that will take it 100% online. So you have to have it built for students that you never see.
Yeah.
If you have students that have that and then come to class, they also benefit because they have all these resources and the videos and the online homework, and they get to see you as well to ask questions in person. But starting from an online platform is key, I think. Yeah. If I had a class that I've never taught online and I'm teaching it face to face and I wanted to go to HighFlex, that would be a lot more work and redesign. Yeah. Because the fact that you have students that are engaging with it only online it can be limiting. You can't spontaneously do something in your face-to-face class that will put the students that are taking it online at a disadvantage. Yeah. So if I wanted to, this is one of the disadvantages, but you can use, again, best practices within the constraints. But one of the things is if you're someone who's used to also improvising a lot, or not improvising, but trying different things. Let's say one day we're all going to have this big discussion in class, and the next day we're going to do more of a flipped classroom, and the next day we're going to do live presentations. You're going to find that really difficult to adapt to for a HighFlex model where you have students that are not coming to class at all. And how do you make up for that live discussion? Live discussions can happen, but you have to plan for it in advance. You can't just after the fact be like, oh yeah, we had this great discussion in class. Here's a discussion board. Post something that occurs to you. Yeah. So you have to, I almost have my whole semester planned out day by day, and I have to be very rigid about it. Otherwise everything gets kind of discombobulated.
So if I'm teaching a face-to-face class and I was thinking, I've taught this face-to-face, I've taught this online, and the online component probably doesn't change a whole lot, like you said, but your face-to-face is definitely going to have to change. You can't do the things that, like you're saying, especially if you're into like a group project or something, or discussions, like spontaneous.
I will say you can do almost anything, but it needs to be thought before the semester begins. Yeah. Or weeks in advance. If you release your modules weekly, maybe the week before, you at least need to be that far in advance to think, okay, what am I going to do 2 weeks from now in class? How do I mirror that for the online environment? Okay, so we're going to have a live discussion. And ideally, you should have thought about this at the very beginning, because if that's going to have points, then you need to have incorporated that into your syllabus. Yeah. So that's online students are prepared to engage with specific material in different ways, and they know what's coming. Yeah. So it does, once you put things in motion, it does kind of lock you in a little more. That's not to say that during lecture you can't lecture a little differently or be flexible. You can also be recording your lecture. It's better, I think, if you have lectures that are pre-recorded, but you can also supplement. Sometimes I think I'm going to go beyond during class, and I'll record myself during class, and I'll say, these are the videos that I have pre-recorded, and here's this particular section of the live class that you should also watch. Yeah. But if you do that every week, it can also become difficult to watch those videos because they usually don't have the best sound, or there's a lot of questions, but that interrupts the video and makes it difficult to kind of follow and whatnot. But once you figure all those details out, you'll be in good shape to then improve upon it. And that's what I do every semester, is I look at what worked, what didn't work, and how we can improve for the next one.
Awesome. So one cool thing that we talked about that I'm really into, I think I think engineering is unique, and one way that you can, and a lot of courses you don't get to see, your students don't get to see hands-on like the product of what they're doing, right? But engineering, you can. And one way I think that you guys are doing that is with 3D printers, right? So you want to tell us a little bit about 3D printers, how you use them in your courses?
Sure. I teach this class called Engineering Graphics. It was one of the first courses I taught for MCC. One of the course objectives given to us by in the ACGM has to do, and I don't remember the exact wording, but it has to do with basically 3D printing. It's part of the course objectives. When I started teaching that class, I had no experience with 3D printers. I was given this class, and April had already purchased a couple of 3D printers back in, we're talking about 2012.
Okay.
3D printing was the technology has existed for a very, very long time. It existed when I was in college, but I remember it was this $1,000 or more. Like, it was expensive technology. Only the graduate students were allowed to touch it. It was actually the 3D printer that we had, or the version of a 3D printer. We didn't call them 3D printers at that time. They were just something about, I don't remember the exact machine we had because I was not allowed to touch it. But it was something about rapid prototyping, something. And it was literally behind it was under lock. It was locked.
Yeah.
Only the graduate students got to play with it. And we just oohed and ahed as we got a demo. And that was the extent of my experience with it. So there was the DIY movement. Did I say that right? Do it. Yes.
Yeah, you got it.
The DIY movement with the whole 3D printer was starting with this company called, among others, but MakerBot was big at the time. We had a couple of MakerBots that April had purchased. But I did not know how they work. So over the summer, before I knew that I was going to start working in the fall, but I had been sort of already hired a few months before. So over the summer, I came to campus and I watched videos and played with the printers and printed a bunch of stuff and got comfortable with it, comfortable enough. And in the course, I designed, with April's help, a few projects that would involve 3D printing components.
And switching gears just a little bit. So your engineering is kind of it feels like there's a lot of like learning the 3D printer. There's a lot of technical side to it. How do you balance that, teaching your students the technical skills, but then also allowing them freedom to be creative and I mean, because it's kind of a balancing act, and learning the actual content too, because it's, they have to learn how to use the 3D printer, right?
Right.
So how do you balance that out?
It depends on the course, and we have different types of courses that allow for different kinds of experiences. A course like graphics does give you a lot of room for students to learn through experiential learning, because I can't teach you CAD if you don't do it yourself. You can watch me all day long, do as many designs in the computer as possible, but till you put your hand on the mouse and actually drag it across the screen to create your first cube, you haven't really learned. Same thing with using a 3D printer. I can show you, but you don't really know it till you experience it yourself, till you mess up and try again and see it happening.
Yeah.
But we have other courses in engineering that are very content heavy, very math heavy, that don't allow for as much experimenting, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. For example, we have I have a circuits class, and that circuits has a lab that's a separate class. In circuits lab, they have a lot more room to learn by doing. But in my circuits lecture, I basically have to, it's problem after problem, concept after concept, analysis techniques. It gets to very high level math, and every class it feels almost rushed just to cover the bare minimum of the course objectives. So I'm trying to see it more as a program where at the end of finishing the program with us, you hopefully have some hands-on experience, all the technical knowledge and all the mathematical knowledge that you need. And ideally, especially for those students that end up staying a third year with us, we try to really encourage doing undergraduate research or special projects that go beyond what we can cover in class. Because we do have a lot of projects in some classes. Programming has a big project component, graphics, introduction to engineering. Others don't give you as much room, and students like the ones that are doing the NASA project, we have this, they compete for this. It's a mission called Artemis, and they're designing a claw. Well, this year they can do different things over the years, but this claw for NASA, and it's an actual competition. They get to really then apply the concepts from the class in a way that's beyond what we can do in class. And I really encourage students as much as possible that whether it's through internships or co-ops, or whether it's through what we call the 2389s, which are our research courses. There's a physics, a chemistry, a geology, biology, whatever it is that you can, that's a way to really take your learning above and beyond.
That's awesome. Do you have students this is your time to brag. Do you have students that have done something awesome in your class, have gone on to like design something that has like can you give us some examples of what?
Sure, absolutely. So in graphics, for instance, what I really love this project because in the second project that we do in the class, the first project is very introductory, but the second project is a problem that I give them where I'm the client, I have needs, they must design something that meets these needs. But for the third project in the class, and there's 3, I tell them, you are going to be your own client. You're going to look at your world, find something that bothers you, annoys you, or you feel is not done to your satisfaction. And you are going to design a solution to this problem, and then you're going to model it in CAD and 3D print. Well, not necessarily 3D print because they have to do a prototype. Depending on what the prototype is, it might be 3D printed, or if it's something larger, they might use other materials. 3D printing is just one of the options. But it is amazing to see them look at their world and realize how many opportunities there are for improvement in simple things. And I tell them, please, you're not here. This project's not about you designing the next self-driving vehicle or AI, anything. It has to actually be something physical that does not have any electronic components, because this class does not have an electronic, you're not necessarily having an electronics background here. It's something that you should be able to model in SolidWorks and make a prototype of. And it can be, the problem can sound silly and can seem simple, but simple is fine. Yeah. And just that way of thinking opens your mind a lot. And I hear this from students at the beginning, like, I can't even think of a good problem. And I tell them that's because you're trying to think too broadly or solve something that everybody's going to use. Don't do that. Find something you'll use. Find something that bothers you. And the best projects are those that students that affect students in a personal level. Yeah. So if I have a student who right now have a student who likes fishing, and says, I like fishing at dawn, and I don't like putting the hooks on my canes in the dark. Yeah. So I want to do it at home. But if I carry my canes with the hooks already on, they're gonna snag on my car and do all these things. So he's designing a little holder to hold the canes in a very specific way so that the hooks can be on this like little plastic contraption and not flying about. Yeah. And and there's probably something out there maybe, but nothing that this student has seen or nothing that is easy to get. And this design is very specific to this one problem, but you know what? That's how you start, and that's how you end up with a great open mind for solutions. Yeah,
that's how you end up on Shark Tank, right?
Right. No, that's right. And that's exactly what I tell them. But the problem is when I bring up Shark Tank, then they start thinking that they need like that level of, and I'm like, no, you start small and then you grow. Yeah. But through that class, some students have come up, because I've had that project for, I've taught this class for 10, 11 years now. So some of the products they come up with, I'm not saying that they're being marketed out in the, but some of them they actually make prototypes that they use, and sometimes they send me pictures and they're like, here's me with my prototype, or hey, my friends keep asking me about this and I've made a few. Yeah. And again, it's something, they're things that seem silly, but sometimes other people are affected by them, and it's exciting to see your product getting good feedback. They usually present this at Scholar Day.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of the people that go to Scholar Day will say like, wow, I have that same problem, or like, wow, I really like this. Are you going to sell it? Yeah. And most of the times the answer is no, but it's great feedback, and I tell them the opportunities are there.
Yeah. I remember Scholar Day. Actually, I was going to mention that because I think the last Scholar Day, there was a young lady that had like this Apple Watch, something with an Apple Watch, and I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like a quick way to
to release the band.
Yes, yeah, and I was like, okay, I need that, because I have a lot of different watch bands for my Apple Watch. I'm like, okay, that's perfect, but I don't know if she's actually selling it. But that was an awesome idea. So I see that. I love Scholar Day, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do this year. Right? Any classes or anything that you want to kind of give a shout out or?
Well, I certainly want to invite everybody to Scholar Day. That's going to be on, I believe, April 21st. Okay. Although I don't remember the time right now, so you might want to add that later.
We'll send out an email.
Yes. My students will be there, as well as many other, both engineering and other field, students from all kinds of fields. It's a great event. I really like it. If you're interested in 3D printing, the library is now has a 3D printer through the Learning Commons, And if you want to learn about it or 3D print something, that's a great way to get started. I think they now have, or they're working on, I hope I'm not saying this wrong, but some kind of module or kit or something to kind of get you started. I know that that's been something that we've been discussing. So if that's not available yet, I think it's in the works. But they have a 3D printer there, so you can 3D print your designs if you're interested. There's a lot of free CAD software out there too.
Yeah.
So if you want to just start tinkering with it, there's Tinkercad and there's others online. So that's great. And yeah, just, continue to support our students through the MCC Foundation. I guess that's it. But thank you for your time. I really enjoy talking today.
Thank you, Paulina. There's like a million other things I really want to ask you. I wish we had more time, but I appreciate you coming and spending some time, taking some time away from your day. Hopefully everyone gets to learn something from this podcast and enjoy it just as much as I did. Thank y'all for listening to Mac Talks. We appreciate y'all taking your time to listen to us. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook, and subscribe to your favorite podcast station. We should be on all of them. Anyway, thanks again for listening to Mac Talk. See you next time.